Have you ever really stopped to think about how a computer actually sees? I mean, how it can instantly spot your friend in a photo, or how a self-driving car navigates a busy street? Well, it's not magic. It's an incredibly elegant idea from mathematics called convolution. But here's the thing. If you only think of it as a math equation, you are missing the real genius. Convolution is actually a set of brilliant, hard-coded assumptions that we've baked right into our AI, teaching it how we humans perceive the world.
So let's think about the core problem for a second. An image to a computer is just a giant grid of numbers, right? Pixel values. Now, if we tried the brute force approach, connecting every single pixel to every neuron in the first layer of a network, well, the number of connections would be insane. For even a tiny image, you need a supercomputer. It is completely computationally unfeasible. And that is the exact problem convolution was born to solve. It's the ultimate example of working smarter, not harder.
All right, so here's our game plan for this deep dive. First, we're going to get to the heart of convolution, this idea of it being a powerful built-in assumption. Then, we'll look at the tools we use to tweak it, like padding and stride. After that, we'll explore some of its interesting cousins, figure out how to run the whole process in reverse, and finally, we'll get real about its limitations and where it can fail.
Okay, let's get right into it. That phrase, infinitely strong prior, sounds super academic, right? But all it really means is that we force the network to obey a couple of fundamental rules about how images work. These rules are non-negotiable, and honestly, they're the network's secret weapon. And you can really see the difference here. On the left, you've got the brute force method. It's a total mess, right? It has to learn every single relationship between every single pixel from scratch. But on the right, you have the elegant, convolutional way. It's built on two brilliant assumptions. First, locality. The idea that pixels are most related to their immediate neighbors. Makes sense? And second, translation equivariance. Now that's a mouthful, but the idea is simple. If a pattern, like a cat's ear, is important in the top left corner, it's probably just as important in the bottom right. Because of this, we can use the exact same feature detector all over the image. This is called parameter sharing, and it is the key that unlocks everything.
So the little tool that puts these ideas into practice is called the kernel, or filter. You can think of it like a tiny detective's magnifying glass. Each kernel is trained to find just one very specific thing, maybe a vertical edge, a specific curve, or a patch of green. The network learns what to look for, and then it slides this little kernel across the entire image, and whenever it finds a match, it lights up. It outputs a high number. That's parameter sharing in action.
Of course, real-world images aren't black and white grids. They've got depth, usually the red, green, and blue color channels. So our input is really a 3D block of numbers. That means our kernel has to be 3D too to match that depth. But here's the really clever part. As the kernel sits on one spot, it looks through all three color channels at once and squishes all that information down into a single value. So a 3D kernel sliding over a 3D input produces a flat 2D map of where it found its feature. And if we want to look for, say, 100 different features, we just use 100 different kernels and we get a stack of 100 2D feature maps as our output.
Okay, so we've got the core concept down, but to actually build these incredibly deep and powerful networks that we see today, we need a couple of essential tools in our toolkit to control exactly how the convolution works. Let's talk about padding and stride.
So here's the sneaky problem. When you slide a kernel across an image, the output is always a little bit smaller than the endpoint. Now, if you do that over and over again, layer after layer, your feature map starts to shrink and shrink until it basically just vanishes. This would mean we could only build really shallow networks, which isn't what we want. And the solution is beautifully, almost comically simple. You just add a border of zeros around the image before you start. That's it. It's called padding. Now, valid padding just means you don't do anything and let it shrink. But the real hero here, the one you'll see 99% of the time, is same padding. Here, we add just the right number of zeros so that the output size is exactly the same as the input size. This is the magic trick that lets us stack layer upon layer going hundreds of layers deep to create these incredibly powerful models without our information just disappearing.
Our second tool is stride. This is basically the step size of our kernel. So instead of moving 1 pixel at a time, we can tell it to jump 2 pixels or 3. As a network designer, you do this on purpose. Using a stride bigger than 1 is a great way to downsample. It makes the next feature map smaller, which drastically cuts down on your computation. It's a really powerful knob you can turn to balance performance against cost.
So, standard convolution is the absolute workhorse of computer vision. It's our go-to tool. But what happens when its main assumption, that a cat's ear is a cat's ear no matter where it is
isn't quite right. For those special cases, we need to meet the rest of the family.
I mean, what if the location of a feature really does matter? Think about recognizing a face. You expect to find a mouth in the bottom half, right? A standard convolution uses the same mouth detector everywhere, which is kind of wasteful. This is where a locally connected layer comes in. It completely throws out parameter sharing. Instead, it learns a totally unique set of weights for every single spot on the image. It's incredibly powerful, but man, is it expensive in terms of memory and computation.
Which brings us to a beautiful compromise, tiled convolution. This is the best of both worlds solution. Instead of having just one universal kernel, or a unique kernel for every single pixel, you learn a small toolkit of, say, 4 or 5 different kernels. Then you just cycle through them in a repeating pattern across the image. It gives you a lot more flexibility and power without the insane cost of a fully locally connected layer. So what's the bottom line here? Is that while these fancier convolutions are great, they are hungry. They need more memory, more compute, and most importantly, more training data to work well. Standard convolution is the tough, efficient, reliable default for a reason. You really only pull out these specialized tools when you have a very specific problem that needs them, and you've got the data to back it up.
Okay, so we've spent all this time talking about how to take a big, detailed image and shrink it down into a small set of abstract features. But what if we want to do the exact opposite? What if we start with the abstract idea of cat and want to generate a brand new, high-resolution picture of a cat? For that, we've got to run this whole process in reverse.
And that is the job of something called the transposed convolution. Now, a quick heads up, you will hear people call this a deconvolution. Try not to do that. It's not really what's happening mathematically. A much better way to think about it is as a learnable upsampling operation. It's like the network learns the smartest possible way to take a small feature map and blow it up into something bigger and more detailed. This is absolutely critical for things like generative models, GANs, and also for tasks like segmentation, where your final output needs to be an image the same size as your input.
All right, but no tool is perfect, right? Every hero has a weakness, and it's super important to understand where our hero, convolution, can fall short. The funny thing is, the very assumptions that make it so powerful are also its biggest Achilles heel. When those built-in assumptions don't match reality, the model is going to have a really hard time.
So let's look at where it breaks. First up, loss of precision. If you use big strides to downsample aggressively, your network might know that a car is in the image, but it might lose the exact pixel-perfect outline you need. Not great for self-driving. Second, long-range relationships. Because kernels are tiny and local, they really struggle to understand how something in the top left corner relates to something in the bottom right. And finally, the whole system is built on a grid. If you took an image and just randomly shuffled all the pixels, a convolutional network would be totally lost. It would just throw up its hands and fail, because you violated its most sacred rule, that nearby things are related.
And this idea of treating every location the same runs deep. Here's a cool little under-the-hood detail. When we add a bias term in a convolutional layer, which is pretty standard, we don't learn a different bias for every single output pixel. Nope, we learn just one single bias that gets added to the entire feature map. It's just another way the architecture is hard-coded with this belief that one rule should apply everywhere.
So, let's just zoom out for a second and think about the big picture here. Convolution was such a revolution because it proved that we could take our human intuition about the world, our priors about things like locality, and bake them directly into the architecture of a neural network. It's a powerful blueprint for building smarter, more efficient AI. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question, the one I want to leave you with. What's next? What other fundamental truths about our world, about language or physics or logic, can we build into our models to spark the next big leap forward in AI?